So we are focusing on the multiplier a lot. That's because the multiplier is key to operationalizing the export-based approach. The whole idea is, okay, let's increase exports and then see the impact that those exports are going to have on income. Okay, but how do we in practice estimate the multiplier? How do we come up with that number? Maybe the most comprehensive and accurate way would be with survey of spending habits. The problem is it's really expensive. To avoid the need for surveys, practitioners have developed a technique to estimate the local multiplier using readily available employment data. We all saw already how to get employment data in our previous homeworks. We are going to get employment data again, but this time to estimate the multiplier. Let's see how that goes. The reasoning is going to be based on the following: that the multiplier can be stated in terms of income or employment. Just a quick review here, our argument was the following: income originally earned by the export sector is spent and re-spent and re-spent and re-spent locally, creating additional income through the multiplier. So the idea is, we looked at the little c, the marginal propensity to consume locally. Every time somebody had an income, you spent part of it locally, and that became somebody else's income, and part of it would be spent locally again, and so on. So using this reasoning, you got the multiplier. Basically, it's number here, k. If exports increase by, say, $10, and the multiplier is 2, income is going to increase by $20. The multiplier can also be stated in terms of employment. The same way that it was stated in terms of income, it can be stated in terms of employment. The reasoning is the following: when income grows, we spend more, a part of it locally. That was the reasoning of the multiplier. But when we spend more locally, meaning we are buying more goods and services locally, well, those goods and services, they have to be produced. Therefore, if more goods are purchased, more goods must be produced, and therefore more people need to be hired to produce those goods. So there is here a correlation. When income increases, expenses increases, so employment increases, such as to increase production so that the larger demand can be met by a larger supply. There is therefore a correspondence between income and employment. Using a similar argument that used for the previous multiplier, you can derive the multiplier in terms of jobs. You increase the number of basic jobs. Basic jobs are exporting jobs. When you increase that, you increase income. When you increase income, you increase expenses. When you increase expenses, that means there is a larger demand, which must be met by a larger supply. Therefore, there is an increment in employment. Now, the expression is the same here, but instead of exports, we have export jobs, and instead of income, we have employment. Now, once you recognize this correspondence between income and employment, between export jobs and between exports, we're going to make two extra assumptions to make this correspondence, this link between employment and income, be stronger. Our first assumption would be income is proportional to employment. So basically that's the correspondence we're talking about. Therefore, no basic income as a proportional of total income will equal no basic employment divided by total employment. What are we talking about here? No basic income was the local income. In the example we saw in the previous video and also in the Excel example that I posted, no basic income was $35. Why? That was 35% of the export income, which was $100. So that would be $35. That as a proportion of total income, which is 35%, will be equal to the proportion of no export employment or no basic employment divided by total employment. We are also going to assume that the ratio of export employment to total employment is constant. Each new export job creates the same number of no basic jobs. With these two assumptions, we have the following. The proportion of no export income divided by total income will be equal to the proportion of no export employment divided by total employment. But the proportion of no export income divided by total income was little c. So you're going to change here, this is the expression for the multiplier, we're going to change our little c to no export employment divided by total employment. Again, c is the proportion of no export income divided by total income, which you are assuming is equal to no export employment divided by total employment. Now I can simplify this expression here even further. Instead of 1, I'm putting total employment divided by total employment. That's equal to 1, so I didn't change the expression. Putting them in the same denominator, we have now total employment minus no basic employment divided by total employment. But total employment minus no basic employment is just basic employment, which is export employment. So Q equals 1 divided by B divided by T. Now, using algebra, the multiplier becomes total employment divided by basic employment. That is one way to estimate the multiplier. It is very inaccurate because it depends on many assumptions, but it's very cheap and very easy to calculate. You just get total employment and divide by the number of export employment. Now, how would you interpret these results? Assume that total employment is 2,000 and export employment is 1,000. Well, I already know the multiplier. 2,000 divided by 1,000 is 2. If an economic developer proposes to organize a conference that would increase expenses of outside residents, which would be export expenses, visitors of the conference in this case, by $100,000, how much is that going to increase local income? Well, the answer is $200,000, which is 2 times this. How do I know that? Because I estimated the multiplier to be 2. Again, there are other more complicated techniques for estimating local multipliers, such as regression or input-output models. We're going to talk about those in Chapter 6. This is very inaccurate, but it's very easy and very cheap.